This is Lesson 6 in our study of Proverbs 31. I'm Jeannie, and we are just beginning to discover what Moxie's wardrobe is made of. She is the ultimate example of a woman who is a force of character, determination, courage, and nerve, and this proverb is filled with descriptives. This week, there's one that stands out. She is fearless. In our last lesson, we looked at our responses, our reactions. Were you a little bit more aware of your responses this past week? Did some of them surprise you? Did some of them scare you? Possibly even embarrass you a little bit? Could you see where some of your responses may have come from learned behaviors? Now, I know it may seem like we're doing an awful lot of looking at our past, but there is a part of that that is so important. And I said in the beginning, we are looking at our past and our present because together they make up who we are. We look at our past only to understand where some of our missing pieces may have been lost. But we never look at our past to allow us to stay there. We no longer have to stay back there. We have the ability to heal our hurts, to mend the wounds, and to free that child and allow them to grow. Did you ask God to plant seeds of goodness in you? I know this image just stuck with me. And not only to plant seeds of goodness, but of kindness, of faithfulness, of gentleness, of self-control. Remember, we have the choice to either work really hard at creating these attributes, or we can simply learn to trust. And when we put those two verses in Galatians together, they said this: if you stay connected to me, I will plant seeds of love and joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control that will blossom effortlessly from you. And did you find some time to rest? Did you practice the art of resting? I hope you did. I hope you set aside at least 30 minutes, and I trust that this week you're going to set aside more. Resting is when we stop all the voices and turn off the chaos, when we quiet ourselves to listen. Have you ever been in conversation with someone who doesn't give you a chance to speak? My son went to visit an old friend, and when he returned, I said, "So, how was it?" He said, "Well, it was good. Except someday I hope that I can actually be part of his conversations." One-sided conversations, they just don't work. But we do that a lot. We do that to God. We are the one-sided talking, telling him everything that we want him to do, what we would do if we were God, what he needs to go take care of. All of the things that we want are lists. Sometimes we just need to shut up. And that is what resting does. It forces us to stop, to be quiet, to listen. We can't listen very well when we're the ones talking. And it's in those times of being quiet that God will speak. And when he does, don't be surprised. It will typically be something very simple, very basic. We are the ones that have the tendency to complicate it. It's also in our resting that God can plant those seeds that allow us to be women who respond with good every single day of our life. And that brings us to the beginning of our 6th lesson. She's a ship. The verse reads this: she seeks wool and flax. She works it with her hands. She is like a merchant ship. She brings food from afar. Now I'm guessing that McDonald's drive-thru just does not qualify for being like a merchant ship, bringing food from afar. Seeking wool and flax, working with her hands, being like a merchant ship. To me, this is describing one adventurous mama. She isn't stuck in her little world. She is outside of her 4 little walls, outside of her little town, her little world, finding new adventures, finding new ways of doing things. Now remember, our study in Moxy is not to give us to-do lists. It's to help us develop character and habits from a woman who lives a very full and productive life. My mom and I were talking about this proverb, and she said, back when I was studying Proverbs 31, I knew right away I could never be a Proverbs 31 wife. And I stopped right there, because back when she was studying it, it was all about being the perfect wife. But she said I could not do all of those things. And it's true. If we look at it from that standpoint, this is a huge to-do list, but we don't have time for to-do lists. And we don't have time to practice on only being a perfect wife. What we're studying here is we're studying examples of character, of habits, of how somebody who has it all actually does it. And then we can take those things and we can use them in our own life for the roles that we play. That may be a wife, it may be mother, maybe a CEO, an employer, an employee. It may be a cook, a chef, an artist, a photographer. So if seeking out wool and flax and working with our hands and being like a merchant ship bringing food from afar isn't about doing things, then what is it saying to us? I believe it is saying that this woman is engaged in life. She is living it to its fullest. She is taking every advantage that it gives her. She is interesting because she reaches out past her little world, her four little walls, and she is exploring and discovering new worlds all the time. If you've ever been around kids who grew up in this type of environment, they are amazing. They become as creative and engaged in the outside world as their mothers. And their worlds are huge, and they aren't afraid to explore them. Women who aren't afraid to explore the world are engaging. They are great conversationalists. They are interesting to talk to hang out with, to be in relationship with. And I can see why the Queen Mom listed this as one of Moxy's traits. Being engaged in life requires us not to be afraid. And these women aren't. But wow, that is a big one. Our world is controlled by fear. We hear it from the news, we hear it from politicians, and sadly, we hear it a lot from the pulpit. But this woman isn't afraid. She is exploring the world. She is seeking it out, discovering all that is out there. If she's afraid, she doesn't let it stop her. She is expanding her own world. So I'm going to ask the question, how adventurous are you? And why? Now, not all adventures require ziplining through the rainforest. Some start with simply trying something new, a new restaurant or a new recipe, a new color in your wardrobe. I managed a women's apparel store for a couple of years, and it was quite an experience. It was a study in women's behavior. Women would come in and they would comment about the outfits that the mannequins had or the displays and how wonderful the outfits looked, how well they went together. And more times than not, they would end with, but I don't wear that color. There was one Saturday afternoon that I will never forget. A husband and wife were in. They were probably in their early 50s. He was bringing her great clothes. I mean, this guy had an eye. He was bringing her colors. He was bringing her textures. He was just bringing her fun clothes to add to her wardrobe. And every time he handed her something, she would say, but I don't wear that. And finally, he turned around and he said, well, maybe you should try something different. And I bit my tongue because I totally agreed with him. In the 20 minutes that I had interacted with this woman, I had come to the same conclusion. Honey, maybe you should just be trying something different. Is fear stopping you? Fear seems to pop up quite a bit in this study. In fact, fear pops up a lot in the Bible, and most of the times when the Bible says that an angel was sent to deliver a message, their first words were, do not be afraid. And in fact, when Jesus appeared to Mary after he rose from the dead, the first words were, do not be afraid. Fear plays an important role in keeping us bound up, in keeping us from trusting, in keeping us from moving beyond our four little walls. And it has the power to keep us trapped. So I want to connect. Oh, there's that lovely word again. I want to connect another verse here. And it's another one that falls into that practicalness of God category. The verse is found in 1 John. And it simply says this: there is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. Fear and love are opposites. If love fills our lives, there's no place for fear. And the simplest way to get rid of fear that we have is to stay connected to perfect love, which comes from God. Adventures also usually involve change. Now, that's a very dirty word to some people. And if you fear change, then I'm going to start asking the questions. Why? What is it about change that rattles your world so much? It couldn't possibly be the need to control, could it? And why do you need to be in control? This question has many answers, but again, most of the time we feel we have to be in control because of a past experience, a time when we weren't in control and somehow we were victimized or hurt, and we never want it to happen again. So we are determined that we are going to stay in control. And once again, we have to play the why game. But remember, playing the why game doesn't have to be scary. We can separate the adult from the child in us. And we can watch the rerun through the adult eyes. We can bring an adult understanding to a childhood experience. Have you ever worked or been in partnership with someone who is controlling? Do you recall what it's like? It's horrible. It is life-sucking. It can stop any creativity, any kind of freedom. It robs us of any kind of fun, of teamwork, of working together. If you've had that experience, keep that person, that situation in your mind and be determined that you're never going to do that to somebody else. You're never going to be like that. The need to control most often brings us back to our fear of being out of control. The two are connected. Fear finds its way into most of our situations. But we have a new weapon against fear. What casts out all fear? Love. Fill your life with love, not only receiving, but giving. And what is love? It's one of those fruits of the Spirit, and it will blossom in us when we are connected to its source. And who is that perfect love? It is God. And we experience His love through Him, through His Son, and through others. There is no room for fear when there is love. Back to our verse, she is like a merchant ship, going from port to port, finding new ways of doing things, exploring the world that God has given her, expanding her horizons beyond the town she lives. I not only want to be her, I want to be with her. I want to get to know her. I want to be her friend. The prayer that I leave with you this week is this: God of the universe, expand our little worlds. Give us the courage to explore this world that you have given us. Guide us in our exploration. Open our eyes to all that is around us. Teach us how to stay connected to you. Fill us with your love so there is no room for fear. And I challenge you this week, be adventurous. Do something you've been putting off. That may be going to a store that you've always wanted to see. Try a new restaurant or a new recipe. Add a new color to your wardrobe. And if that's too scary, then just wear crazy underwear that nobody's going to see but yourself. And remember, being adventurous may take a little bit of practice. It may feel a little uncomfortable at first, but you'll get the hang of it. And when you find fear tapping you on the shoulder, whispering in your ear, no, that's not appropriate. Don't do that. You can't do that. What will people think? Repeat the words. Perfect love casts out all fear. There isn't room for both. It is one or the other. Thank you for joining me in this 6th lesson. We've added one more garment to Moxy's wardrobe. I think it's one that is full of color. It is patterns and textures, and it draws others to us. We are all on our way of becoming women clothed in strength and dignity and can laugh without fear of the future. If you haven't already contacted me, please take the time to do so. Tell me about your adventures. You can connect with me two ways, through my blog at jeanniegb.com or to email me directly at moxy@asilverthread.com. I'm looking forward to our next lesson.